All right, we can start.
Okay, perfect. And then if other folks join us, we'll just get them plugged in and keep moving along. I don't have a whole lot of PowerPoint slides for you. I more so just wanted to set the stage for the demo agenda, which hopefully is everybody's expecting to see this, right? We're going to talk about invoicing and payments and the approval process.
Yes.
Just some quick comments, invoicing, whether it's a purchase invoice or sales invoice, right? The experience for the user is essentially the same. We're going to have this example as a purchase invoice to then flow to a payment and then have an approval process around that payment entry. So another note on approvals, right? So you can have these types of approval workflows throughout the system, whether that's creating a new customer, creating a new vendor or account, or approval on a purchase order or a purchase invoice or a payment. You have the ability to build these workflows in a lot of different areas. Again, we're just going to look at the payment workflow for this particular example today. And any thoughts or comments beyond that? Otherwise, I was going to hand it over to my colleague Rosa Marte to do the demonstration, who I know that you all haven't spoken to yet, but she's been plugged into the project that we've been working with you all on, and she's just another one of our resources that we wanted to get in front of you so you can meet more of our team. But any thoughts or questions before we get moving forward?
When you were saying we were going to go over invoicing, you're talking about like paying vendor invoices?
Correct.
Okay. I think we had some like leftover questions from last time on, issuing invoices to customers. Do you think we'll have some time to look at that today, or is that another follow-up?
No, we'll have time, plenty of time. We schedule an hour, and I don't think we'll take that much time even including that. And I've prepared Rosa to be able to go and look at sales invoicing as well. So we'll go through the sort of the purchasing side first, if you will, and then we could transition to that afterwards.
Great. Thanks so much.
Sure. So again, Rosa is another one of our Business Central consultants. So Rosa, if you're ready to share your screen.
Hello. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'll do my desktop so you can have both screens. Can you all see my desktop?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to be doing in a while is switching from one user to another, because we have set it up in a way that the approval process flows from authorization of levels from one user to the next user in capacity. So for making a purchase, just as Jonathan mentioned, it's similar to the part of selling. You go to the purchase invoices. The whole process can start either from the quote or requisition all the way to purchase orders and then purchase invoice. Let's just go to the straight line closer. Create a new purchase invoice. We then select our vendor. We need to indicate at least one document number, which is normally the vendor invoice number. And then let's work with rent expenses, for instance. And depending on the type of dimensions that we have, we can start adding up criteria to our register, like specifying a department or a group of departments that we want to allocate this rent expense to, or any kind of details in that term. For this particular exercise, it's just a simple invoice, vendor, general ledger account, the account name. If we need to change the description, we can do it here. If we need to attach the purchase order or any other purchase invoice as an attachment, we can do it from this point, and then we can just post this invoice. I do not have at this time the setup for the flow. It's not enabled for the posting of the invoice itself. We can see it in a while. It's just enabled for the payment of this invoice. So the invoice has been posted. We can go ahead and see the invoice. and it looks just like the same. It's myself as a contact, and the information. The only thing here is that I cannot modify it anymore because it's already posted, and it's a posted purchase invoice. So if we are going to pay now this invoice, there's different ways to do this. We can have, normally what we do when we have transactions, several transactions in the system, is that we ask the system to suggest the payments that we owe. So how much of the accounts payable we have open that are going to be due, let's say today, because we do payments on a weekly basis. So we tell the system, suggest from all the vendor payments that I have open, which ones are going to be due today. And maybe if I do it just on the weekend, like on the end of the week, I will want to include all the ones that are going to be due until next Thursday. So I pay them in advance and instead of falling into overdue invoices. So that's another option that we can work with. For that, we have a process for that. But in this case, because we are showing the approval process, let's just bear in mind that we are going to work with two different scenarios. I can have a payment for no invoice. Let's say I'm just paying an advance payment or some cash to this vendor. I'm going to do it for a small amount or a smaller amount than the limit that I have in my approvals workflow. So in this case, if I post this invoice, this payment to this bank, it's just as simple as selecting the vendor and that's about it. Now my vendor has that information in the system. It's a payment that has not been applied to any invoice. So I don't really know at the moment which invoice I'm going to apply it to. The other option that I have is to actually pay an invoice that I know I'm paying, which is normally the case. So in this case, I'll select my vendor. Then I go to apply entries, and all my open invoices from this vendor are going to appear in the screen. There's also payments that have not been applied because I have been doing testing on this this vendor. And what I want to do is pay one of the invoices that are for more than, or at least for 10,000. Let's say this one will be the one that I think we were looking at now. So we apply it. It indicates the number of the payment that I have in my journal. And then let me increase this. It brings the amount here, so I don't have to actually put the amount. If I'm paying more than one, I can also do it by applying more than one invoice. And then in this case, when I try to post it, oh, that was strange.
What was strange?
The strange thing is that apparently I took out the workflow.
Was it I wasn't looking at the amount. Are you sure it was over the?
It was 1,000. Let's see the amount. Let's see it again. Maybe I did one that was 1,000 instead of 10. This is definitely more.
That's what the approval threshold is based off of, the amount. So that's what we were curious if we didn't have the right amount on that line item to catch the approval process.
Yes, apparently I took out the setup yesterday, but that is strange. Let's go to the user setup for the approvals and verify. This is the approval setup that we have for this environment, in which myself and the administration, I'm the administration in this environment, and Rosa is the approver for myself. So here I have a limit of 9,099, which is one lower than the amount on our invoices. And this is where we normally set up the way we want to receive the notifications. It could be with a note or it could be with emails. So this is how we are working on this. Let's look at the workflow itself. This is the workflow that we have been working with, which is looking into anything higher than 9,999 for vendor payments. It is enabled. So let me just recap that. Take this off. And just in case I had it all in a different way. Yes, I don't know what was there, but this is the message that I am supposed to get, that I'm not supposed to do a payment higher than 10,000. Mm-hmm. So the restriction was imposed because the line requires approval. That's what I'm getting here. What normally then you would do is, well, you should know this. The person who's normally doing the payments knows that whenever the amount is higher than the approval limit the person has, instead of working on the actually trying to post it, it will just do the request of the approval. So there is a space for you to request the approval of this, to send an approval request. And then once it's sent, in my screen from the other user, the user that is supposed to be receiving this information, which is now Rosa here in this environment. I don't know if you can see it. Mm-hmm. Now let's refresh this one. I'm getting an approval request here. So Rosa needs to approve it before I can post that. If I go here, I have this payment, which is the one that I'm looking at. I can see the details of the payment. It's for 17,000. It's for this vendor. I can go to the journal itself. I can reject it. I can delegate it to somebody else if I want a second approval, or I can impose a second approval mandatory as well. So it doesn't have to be that is close to one approval only. I can open the record and see the actual journal, or I can just go ahead and approve it. And then if I go to my other user here, which is now the one that I had before, I can go to my payment journal. And now I should be able to post this payment once it's approved. That's how it basically works. And it can be done in different scenarios. As I mentioned, it can be done with limits per line. It can be done with limits per the whole journal. So instead of taking in consideration just one line at a time, it will just summarize all the lines. And if it goes over certain limit, then it would not go through. Or just look into the individual lines. So even though the amount of the full journal goes over 10,000, if the individual lines are not, like for each vendor is smaller amounts, then it can go through. So you can set it up in both ways. You can also set it up for particular vendors. So if you have vendors that you have some limitations or different than others, you can also do it per vendor. This the workflows, as Jonathan mentioned before, can be we can set up the approval process from the purchase itself. So just making a purchase order suitable, being able to release it, can trigger an approval process, or the posting of the purchase invoice, or the payment itself. So it can be done in different ways. It can even be done to have approvals for creating a vendor, to making able that a vendor can be used in the system. So you can have approvals for that as well. And the same happens in the other side, in the customer side. You can have approvals for customers if you have managed customers and you want to have control of which ones you are giving credit limits to and how much is the credit limit, that kind of stuff. Then you can also have approvals on the sales side. Normally, you would not have them on the receiving of the money, but nobody knows.
Can you walk through? Yeah, can you walk through one more time how you set that up? Because maybe that's something that we would get help with in implementation, but it's something we can maintain ourselves.
Yeah, definitely you can maintain yourself. You first work, there's several things. You have workflow templates that come in the system. They come from all different parts of like different modules. These are like templates that are already done for you. So you can use them as a base to build your own approvals. So what I have done is I have used one for the journals. And once you copy it from the templates that you have here to the actual workflows are working, you have these particular setups. Let's say I have for invoice approval. This is normally what an approval work for the actual purchase would look like. This comes by the system already set up, pre-set up. So you normally what you do is kind of fine tune it. But the criteria comes already in, like what would the system do when you request an approval? What will it do when the approval is requested and is approved, or when it's rejected? So you would say, like, when it's approved, then pending approvals for that invoice should be 0, and then you remove the restriction for which you have added a restriction before. So this is already built in. You don't have to do it. What you normally do is just work on these different filters to kind of fine tune the information for your particular business, like the 10,000 threshold. If it's 500 or 50,000, then you would change it here. In this case, it comes empty, so you have to put this kind of filters. If you are doing a filter per vendor, then you can just select here which is the one that you want to use workflow for. So,
and we had talked a little bit about, I know it's like a layered on solution, but doing multi-entity type stuff. All of these approval workflows, could you set these up by company, or is it possible to flow across multiple entities? Or you set it up for each company? Is that how it works?
The company itself is one. The entities are kind of dimension control, so you set it up like that. I will have to have a MEM database to show you how it would work with them. But it's supposed to be in a way that is transparent for the user whenever you do things from one entity, if you don't have the capacity or the permissions to work in the other one. So it should be going through the control of the entities layout.
Okay, thanks.
What normally the MEM extension does is it adds some additional columns here to separate, like, I want this only for this entity. I want this to be for all entities, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So that's how it normally works. It's like a grid on top of everything. So I will have to have definitely a database to show you that has the MEM, but it works like that. So you enable it, or you just take it, like, for instance, if I take this one and now I put it here, now it's enabled. It was not before. So let's say I now want to do a purchase invoice for the same amount as before. Same vendor. Another number here. I know it's not going to be there. And let's just use the same one. And let's say, yeah, it's for more than 10,000. And now if I want to post it, it indicates that the purchase invoice needs to be approved and released before it can be posted. So it's as simple as enable them. You can activate it or deactivate it at any given point. So it goes through the same process. Now I request the approval, I send the approval request, and then it will just go to the person that has the approval. That's how it works. The other part of the setup that we saw briefly is the user approval. So you first kind of do the layout of the approval setup. You tell the system what needs to be approved. And then you come here and tell who is the approver, who needs to approve who. So I could have here, in this case, the administrative user, which is the one that normally runs the demo, needs to be approved by Rosa, which is myself, but the user of Rosa. Then Rosa here has additional setup, like I have unlimited purchasing capabilities, so I will not have that kind of limitation. If there is a limit over a limit, like if I had a limit of 15,000 on top of this 9,000 that the administrator have, then somebody else would have to be the approval of the second layer approval, which probably can be Debbie or Ann. And then we will add that here. So I would probably have to have additional numbers here. And then that's how when it works. When you have it set up with the emails, then the emails from the contacts, the persons here, is the ones that are used for the whole setup. We have it set up in this demo for the notes, the ones that come in the dashboard whenever you have your initial screen when you come in the morning. Well, I have pending approvals. There's also when the approvals are overdue, because you state the time in which they're supposed to be approved. And then you have like things like you can do delegate, as I mentioned before. So you have somebody who's on vacation, then whatever that person is supposed to do, somebody else can approve it in their name, and all the setup goes to that new person. And then you have here the substitute, like if I can't do it, somebody else can approve it for me. Normally, this takes a little more of time and testing. The approval setup tend to be complicated because whenever you set up the substitute, then you need to make sure that the person receiving the approval rights have the actual permissions to perform as in your name, as you mentioned. I mean, if you need to have that person also being able to do more than the 10,000 and that kind of stuff. But that's basically how it works.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
So I'm just curious, how do you all see an approval process going in your organization? And I think you're using bill.com, so maybe you already have some approval workflows.
Well, we use bill.com somewhat, but go ahead, Julie or Elizabeth.
I was going to say, Julie, you want to take that one?
So currently, our operating company, the approval process is really at the tail when Trip signs the checks. So our AP can enter unlimited amounts into our QuickBooks, but then we'll have to check it out. So, Trip, I'm curious how you feel about.
Well, the approval process, which needs to be better, is right now bills come in to the people who pay them. The bills come in, they get, if it's a usual course of activity, they get written up. If we get a bill, for instance, from a law firm, or we get a bill from somebody that's unusual, then I'll get an email saying, with a copy of the bill saying, who pays this and is it approved? What do we do with it? And I'll say, it needs to be paid by this entity. And go ahead and pay it. And so then it will get paid, but I sign every check. So the ultimate approval is me signing every check. These checks still need to, go ahead.
I was going to say that's the workflow right now, like for when we don't use bill.com, right? Because bill.com,
I approve it.
For the entity where I use bill.com, we just have the settings at the moment set up to just have every single bill approved, and it's not more complicated than that at the moment.
Yeah, we approve every. There are no checks that can get written without, no matter the value, the amount. You would need prior approval on, if the checks are still going to get written, you need prior approval on every check, basically.
I could see a little value. I could see a little value in being able to set permissions by vendor. So like if forget actually approval of paying it, but just like Julie and I have gone through a list of certain vendors where like there's no way accounts payable would know what expense account to post that to or what detail to include. And so if there's certain vendors where it needs to be like approved, like, hey, is this the right way to post that? That could be a valuable workflow. I could see value in that.
Yeah, certainly. So that, that's just an additional workflow beyond the, the payment journal. But, I think Rosa was chiming in to say that, you could certainly have it, all payments need approval versus having thresholds on that payment. So much easier setup, of course, too, right? You don't have to worry about all the additional things.
Right.
And you can have a hybrid too. You can have like a first layer in which you do all the payments in a journal, they're there, but in order for you to post any of them, somebody needs to approve them. So that's one layer. And then if one of those is higher than, let's say, 100,000, then somebody additional has to also approve those additional ones. So you could also have like some kind of hybrid with different layers.
Mm-hmm.
And the flow for the approval of the vendors themselves, it comes in the system too. It's a template, so you don't have to build it or anything. You can just use it right away from the system.
Yep. Okay. And then once it gets approved, then it can go the check gets cut, correct? The check can be cut.
In this case, I just did a regular entry, like if it was a transfer. But when you work with the checks, then in that case is when the check can be actually printed and posted.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
When you have printed checks in the system, you cannot print them without posting the check because you cannot emit a legal document and not have it in the system. So if it if you get messed up in the printer or something, then you have to void it because the check doesn't exist anymore. In the case of the approvals, it's the same. You cannot print the check, have them print out without the approval because it could be that once you print it, what tells you not to sign and you just send it out. So the printing itself comes with the controls of the approval.
Okay.
And
so what other thoughts and questions do you all have on purchasing and paying and approvals and workflows?
Well, what about creating an invoice?
A sales invoice?
Yeah, like we invoice our clients for bills.
Yeah. So we can absolutely go take a look at that. But again, just making sure there's no other.
Can you hear me now? I got a new microphone.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, Marta, I don't know if I misunderstood you earlier, but did you say once these purchase invoices are created, you cannot go back in and edit them? Like the two we have here, can say it's already been posted, say we would send it to the wrong account, can you go in later and change the account?
No, once the invoice is posted, you need to correct it. You have the ways to do that. Like if I go to the posted purchase invoices, I can actually do, let's say this one, which is the last one I was looking at. I have a process to correct it, but that process, what it will do to keep track of everything and traceabilities within the system is it will create in the background like a credit memo. So we will do a reversing entry of whatever you did. To help you out, the creation of the correction, it will just recreate a new purchase order template so you can modify whatever you needed to modify and post it again. But it leaves track of it. It's not like it opens something that is already posted and allows you to change the same document. It does something in the background. It does an entry, so you have a reversal of the initial document.
All right, and it gives you that audit trail.
It gives you that audit trail.
Okay.
So like for instance, this is posted, I cannot change it. The ones that we were looking at now, they're drafts. So you can have it as a draft. They're open for an indefinite amount of time until you are ready or sure that this is what you need to post. It doesn't go away. It's like a draft. It just tells you that it's not posted if you want to go out, but it's still there. But once you post it and it's in your accounting, you need to do the correction or do an entry on your own, like a general ledger entry directly or something, but it doesn't get, you cannot change it anymore.
So what if the person who inputs the invoice doesn't know maybe what account to send it to? Do they have the option to ask for approval even if it's under the usual threshold?
The setup that I have here now is for amounts, not for the actual accounts to be used. So we could try to work out on something that whenever you use certain accounts, you need approval. But normally that kind of ties out a little bit. I mean, makes the process of posting a little cumbersome if you have to ask permission to use certain account all the time, because it's gonna work all the time. Mm-hmm. So, but we could certainly do something like that, working on specific accounts, like whenever you use that account.
Well, and Rosa, there's likely some setup things that could be done with posting groups and such that may be able to help, automatically find the right account for them?
Normally, the posting groups will help you to determine the accounts that are going to be used when you have items. But when you are using accounts, you just use them.
That's fair.
We can definitely put filters and controls so people do not see all the accounts from the general ledger chart of account. So they will have like a limited amount of accounts to use in certain documents. That is something we could do. So you don't have like people just going around the whole chart of accounts. And that will probably help the user kind of narrow down the list and just have some things down there. The other thing that is really helpful is to create standard invoices. Like you create standard purchasing lines in the system, and then whenever you have, let's say, the electricity bill, instead of having, you have an allocation with several lines and you have different things there, or an administrative fee in which you actually have several lines that you distribute between your companies, like rental space administration, payroll management fees, whatever. You have different lines, like 10 lines that you actually do an allocation between your companies. You don't want to do that same invoice every month or every quarter and have to put all the lines. So you make like a recurrent journal out of it in an invoice, and then you only have to change the amounts, or you could not even have to change the amounts. If it's the same amount for the whole year, like some kind of administrative fee that you have for the whole year, you can also have the same amount fixed for the whole year and just post it every month. So there are certain ways to help out the cost of the user, not to make mistakes or narrow down the amount of information he has available, so it's not too much information that can get him confused. And we can work with recurrent lines, so you don't have to make those different lines every time, or build recurrent lines for specific things that you want. But apart from that, the workflows themselves might not be that useful. I don't know if I answered the question.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
So you were talking about the sales. The sales is basically the same. It's just we don't have any approval process in the sales in this setup, but you just select your customer. I only have one sample customer here. Why is dividing by 0? I have no idea. Let me do it from, so just in case. Oh, This one or any one of this.
Rose, I don't know that they'll be using sales orders.
Yeah, so it might not be useful for them to do it like that. I don't know what's, I'm missing some setup for the sales here, which is strange because I did a sales yesterday. Maybe my user is not.
And this is a different company too.
It could be a different company. Yes.
Well,
No, let's use the Chronos. It works like that. So we have the sales invoices and sales. We create a new one. We select the customer, any one of they will work in this database. And then we have a GL account for income. Let's say normally it's this one, exactly. And it's basically the same amount and quantity. We can have a preview of the posting, and then you can see the dimensions that I need in this database. For department and division. So let's do that. We can post that one.
so we have many different demo environment or demo companies in this one environment. So we've got, a variety of different dimensions that are specific here for whatever this previous demo was. But, that could be your company, your location, whatever the relevant dimensions that you all would be selecting for this particular transaction.
So let's say this one is ready for posting. We can post it, and this is the invoice that has been posted. And then print it or send it by email. And this is just like a regular layout of the invoice. This is for the Chronos database. It comes with the logo that you put in the system and information for the customer and information on the actual invoice. I didn't have any setup for taxes, so there's tax 0 here. And you can send it by email. You can do as a PDF or as an attachment or as a part of the body of the email or just print it out. And that's how the sales part basically works, very similar. And you can also do the same kind of filters with the accounts, and you can also do the same kind of recurrent sales invoices, so you don't have to do every time, put all the lines. You can also copy documents that have been posted previously, so you have the option to not to redo very long invoices and stuff like that. And even for the credit memos, since if you are like trying to do a credit memo just reversing one entry, you would probably have the chance to copy the same invoice, so you don't have to do the data entry again. I don't know if you guys have any questions
on the sales invoicing?
Elizabeth?
No, looks good so far. Julie's the one doing our accounts receivable at this point. Julie, did you see anything you want to see more of or have questions about?
I mean, I'll trust that the reports that can be memorized, that might not be available to see right now. But let's just say we send 50 invoices a month for consulting fees. Is there a way to send them out as a batch or track what all has been emailed?
Yes, you can set up in the system a job queue, something that helps you do like recurring processes. And then if you have this type of kind of automatic invoices, you can set up that as a task for the system to do like every night or every week or every month. And then you have a log there that helps you see which ones were sent, which ones gave you any type of error, if any, and if the process has been done, like if it has been sent.
Oh, okay. And then what about if a customer has an overdue balance, can you adjust the current invoice to reflect that also?
Well, the overdue balance would not necessarily have to come in the new invoice. What you would probably have is a statement that you can send out to the customers with any pending things, like in pending invoices from before, and then he will have there whatever is pending. Not just that invoice, but because if it's overdue, what you do, you change your invoice and include the overdue amount?
No, I was referring to a statement that goes along with the current.
So yeah, normally it's a statement, because I have seen some companies that in their invoice, not the invoice itself, but in their invoice put a little tag on the bottom indicating what is due from previous invoices.
Right, yeah, we have that too. We'll have the current invoice amount and then the subtotal includes something,
but it's kind of because if you have things that have changed, like if you then get a payment in between, it doesn't. But a statement is normally what we sent out, and it includes both the current and the previous one, if it's pending.
Okay.
Julie, I may have missed it, but did you see, like, do we need more demonstration of how that batching process works? I mean, that's pretty time intensive with the capabilities that QuickBooks has right now, you know.
What process?
The batching of the invoices. Yeah, I mean, the way we do it right now, just so you guys kind of understand, is like, you know, like Julie said, I mean, it's a pretty high volume of invoices that get sent either on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. And, you know, to have to do any part of that manually really slows us down. And usually we're able to sort of enter those, queue them up as a batch, but then be able to go in and sort of like adjust as necessary if we need to add like extra hours here and there, or, you know, review them before they actually get emailed to the client. And then we can actually, you know, see whether or not the clients have viewed it. And we love the option to connect that to some sort of like electronic payment button, just anything to make that process easier. So it sounds like there is some batching or memorized transaction capability, but I think we'd really like to see that demonstrated to feel comfortable with that, you know, that's something that we can make a really seamless process.
Well, what I'm getting is that you get that information some way electronically and you input in the system that information, or you have to type it in?
For what we send to our clients?
Yeah.
No, we type it in. I mean, it's not most of the amounts don't change. So for clients that are on, you know, retainer, like that would just be a memorized, you know, we bill them X number of dollars every quarter. And we need to, you know, not reinvent the wheel every time we're issuing all of those invoices.
I don't know if I have a standard in this database. Let me see. Standard. I don't know if we have. We'll probably have to do a setup for that to show you that kind of functionality, because I don't think I have it stuff. But it's it would be useful if I had the information to put in, so I can put it the same way you have it. But if not, we have to set up an environment for that.
Yeah, I guess I don't fully grasp sort of what the system is able to do out of the box, and like what we can sort of set up ourselves, and, you know, what's limiting you right now from being able to say, okay, we've got 3 different clients, we want to bill the same amount every quarter, and sort of like batch those invoices? Like, is that something you'd have to build out in the background to be able to set up, or walk me through sort of how?
No, you would probably just have the standard lines. Let me see if I have.
Well,
I don't.
so if I maybe answer this in a more holistic view, so this is a platform that you can configure, and I'm using that word versus customize. You can configure the system to do these processes in a lot of different ways. And that's our value in the equation, is understanding how the system can operate and then working with you to configure this to work the way you need it. And it's oftentimes just setup screens that have to we have to go through to check certain boxes or enter certain things. Like we saw a few of the setup screens for the workflows and setting up the approvers. It's essentially that process, right? It's going through those setup screens and configuring things to work, and not having that set up right now isn't saying that we can't do it or that it's hard to do. It's just saying that we just we haven't configured it here yet, right? And I would almost be willing to bet that one of these companies that are in this environment probably does, but we'd be spending 10 minutes trying to find which one and actually getting it to work. And I'm not trying to say, we don't want to show you things, right? It's more just, the ability to get you there is built into this platform, right? We can do pretty much anything that you would need to do, and a lot of the things that you all have mentioned are not highly customized things.
I think that's my concern is like, I mean, I don't know how familiar you guys are with QuickBooks, but it's like obviously accounting for dummies and a widely used solution. But it's not difficult at all just to set that up on the fly in QuickBooks. So my concern is that we're trying to kind of force a square peg in a round hole here, that like it's not really, an easy function that we can make it do it, but it's not like designed to do it, or that there's not a whole lot of like extra functionality around it, is my concern. And if we only have one operating company that really needs this functionality, well, maybe two, because I think Keeley and USNTI also does a fair amount of invoicing. I don't know if, Keeley, are your invoices recurring, or they're all created one-off?
They're virtually all one-off. Yeah, there's like one or two that are recurring.
Okay. So really only one operating company that would need this sort of like batch recurring invoices capability. But it's also like our primary operating company that all of our, fees from our funds are flowing through and all of that kind of stuff. So, I've even thought, okay, we keep, our operating company in QuickBooks and move everything else to, a better solution, but I'm not sure that that's realistic either. So yeah, the more you guys can kind of help us see that, I think the better on the invoicing side, because it's something that Julie spends a lot of time on. And then even like reporting on our revenue streams is pretty manual and in Excel. So if it's possible to see that demonstrated at some point, I think that would be helpful. Or Julie, am I going down a path here? Or do you feel comfortable with what's been shown, or?
Well, I understand that they're probably not set up right now to show us what she's referring to as in setting up reports for each customer, so you don't have to create each individual invoice every month. And then the tasks tracking. I mean, it all sounds good in theory. Yeah, it would be helpful to see it.
Okay.
I don't expect to see it right this second.
Yeah, peg that for next time. Okay.
This is Anne. I definitely don't think you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. I mean, the system just has so much functionality. Like Jonathan said, it's highly configurable, and that's not customized. That's just determining what your requirements are and then helping you get it set up so that it just becomes, a routine part of your routine. It's just something you do every month and it's already there, configured and ready to go. So it really just has a lot of functionality. It's just that, as you're seeing, that functionality isn't necessarily set up in this demo environment to show you, but could be, for a future time, and we could walk you through that in more detail.
Yeah,
Rosa,
that
what
makes
were
sense.
you kind of, it looked like you were finding some things there. Do you feel like there's anything of value to show on this?
No, I was trying to set up the standard sales code, the recurrent sales lines, but I need to set up something additional on the sales and receivable setup.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah,
So yeah,
I can definitely, I mean, even just having a previous document copied to the system is something that is easier to do, but that's probably not what you want to do.
Yeah, no, I get it. We can move on. I appreciate that. It's just, I think we would want to see that at some point, or like kind of explore that further. But thanks for, going over that. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. So we'll keep track of that. It's recurring invoices and batch processing that you're interested in seeing. So.
Yeah, and maintaining some basic customer information, like Julie mentioned, contact info for who gets invoices and that kind of stuff.
Right. Do you have a dashboard with all the customer information by customer, so you can see every invoice that was sent out and paid?
Well, you have some of the information on the customer itself in the little dashboard here on each customer. Like if I start changing, it will be showing me the information for each customer. Okay. We can definitely have a different dashboard for the initial screen as well. Like when you go in the initial screen, I have this information here because I have a role set up for a business manager. But if you are a sales manager, you might want to see different things. Like this is like outgoing invoices, things that are overdue, or things that are from payables too, because this is a role that is for a business manager. But you can also have this kind of dashboards kind of build by yourself, like set up. You can decide which information is available on your screen for each one of the different type of roles. But in the customer side, you have this little information here. If you go into the customer itself, you have also additional information to the side that is telling you what is the sales history, the post-sale invoices, whatever information you have been sent out, the things that are pending, and statistical information on the actual movements, the payments that are due. This is something you can navigate to, so you can actually see the details for that, and it's per customer. So.
Oh, okay, that's nice.
Guys, I'm gonna have to drop off. I got another meeting. I'm the least important person, but I'll check in later. All right.
And we'll share the video as well.
All right.
Thank you, Trip.
Thanks.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that does. Thank you. Yeah. And then is there a way, often when we receive payments from customers, they're applied to the incorrect invoices. Is there an easy way to see invoices and what payments that they have been linked to?
Yes, and you can unlink them if you want. If you want to call it that way. So if you have your, let's say your customer information here, you have this information, like this invoice in particular, you want to see the information related to the remaining amount. Let's say this one that has been applied. You have the different, like the application line is this payment for this one. Then you can also have additional information like on applied entries if you believe it's not the correct one that has been applied. Or you can also navigate from here the document that is being applied to. So the information whenever you have application to any of the entries is there all the time. And it can be undone. I mean, you can undo it. Even if you are working with different currencies, the system will do the translation on the difference in exchange rate, and also take that in consideration in your accounting if you are working with different currencies. So there's
Keely.
also
Oh, sorry,
reporting on that.
Keely, were you having some issues with invoices and the payments?
Right, yeah. Is there a way to see, like, so the information you just showed us, you can look at on an invoice by invoice basis? Is there a way to see a report of which payments were applied to which invoices? So basically how, like, whatever the current balance is, how it was arrived at?
Yeah, let me see if this one will show you some, because there's many reports here. This is, for instance, this will show you what has been applied to the payment and applied to each document. So you have this payment that has been applied to this invoice. And then if there's, there's any difference that has not been applied, it will show you that. This is for this customer in particular that has this so many entries, but you can also do it for all the customers, and then just have them one by one, like showing one after the next one. But this shows
can you scroll up to where the column headings are again? So is one of these the numbers that they're listing? I'm trying to see if there's like a check number or the check date, or if it's just
this is this is the information on the payment, the part on the left. So you will have this is the number they have here.
That looks like an invoice number though? That's not like the number of the.
Let me see if I can do it in a different way. No, I'll have to check on that. What in the case of the checks, on the cash receipts, that's the thing. I don't know if they're using in this database the same number of the invoice to put it in the receipt. That might be the case. But I'll have to check on how. Normally, when you do the checks and you are doing it from the payment side of it, you have control of your numberings. So that's probably what happened.
So like whatever number I enter in, like,
it will
to
come
associate with a payment, then it would be a part of that report.
It will be a part of. This is just one of many reports. I mean, there's many other ones that could also help with that.
Okay.
And this is where I said you have the schedule statements that you can kind of set up for sending to the customers, and then you have additional information. And these reports are based on this profile, but then there's also some other reports that are going to be available for the accounting manager or the accounts receivable person.
Okay. And that is something, Julie and Elizabeth, just so you guys know, like, I don't do a lot of recurring invoices, but I do monthly statements. So that's something that I would use.
Oh yeah, good to know.
Okay, so the one that was, let me see if the one that is there has a format closer to what you're expecting. Don't know how much data is in this database for this year. Let me put last year just in case. And include customers, include a function, include a person management, include an applied interest. Let's see if he has some information. So, well, we have 2 invoices there. And that's just a format. That's a credit memo and an invoice.
Okay. Yeah, it's helpful for me when I can specify like the check number of payments.
Well, in this case, this is a statement of open things.
Right, sure. Okay, yeah.
I don't know if you have any more questions or any more things you wanted to see.
I think I'm good for now, but Julie and Keely, you guys let us know.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Yeah, I am too.